All right, everybody, welcome back. So we just went over the financial reports section of key governance area. And we will move into the budget and budget process. So if we go to the next slide, we have the importance of understanding budgets and the budget process. It empowers you to make informed decisions, help control spending, and ensure long-term financial stability and growth. So we'll move to the next slide and start with a question. So the question here is there a current budget that serves our operational and capital needs? So another keyword here, current. A current budget, you'll probably see that as a theme going through all the different key financial areas. Is there a current budget that serves our operational and capital needs? Current is important just because there can be so many changes from year to year that if you're using a 3-year-old budget or 4-year-old budget, it can be difficult for management to try and keep up with that just because of all the different changes that can happen, especially the last couple of years. Budgets also, the good thing with the budgets though is it does force managers to think about planning for the upcoming year, any new goals, initiatives. It gets them thinking about that process and what they want to include and things that they want to do for the following year. So the first part of this that we will talk about is the operational budget. And if we go to the next slide, what is an operational budget? This is a financial plan that outlines an organization's expected revenues and expenses. So this is the budget that is used day to day, and this is the one that helps in planning for timing of cash flows and paying bills. And this is the budget that most people think about when you bring up the topic of budgets. If we move into the next slide, so here are some operational budget assumptions or questions that can be asked about the assumptions included in a budget. So what assumptions are made with regard to revenue? Does it include a percentage for merit increases? Are there any new initiatives included with this budget? Are there any changes to personnel, increases or decreases? Are there any changes to employee benefits expected? So these are some of the things that I would definitely start with when I would meet with council to discuss the budget. You know, what are the assumptions that are included in that budget? And here are some of the questions that you can ask to find out what some of those may be. All these questions are also included in the workbook. So you don't have to write everything down if you don't want. They are included in there. We'll move on to the next one, which is what is a capital budget? So a capital budget is a budget allocating funds to purchase long-term multi-year investments like property, buildings, and equipment. A capital budget is a plan used to evaluate whether or not to fund requested capital expenses. So this kind of begs the question, do you have equipment essential to generating revenue that is at end of life? You know, all equipment has a general useful life, and you want to kind of keep an eye on some of those things to make sure that there doesn't come a time where you're well past that and you have no plans for replacing that, especially if it's an essential piece of equipment. Or you can also take it a step further as far as capital budgets and ask, is there a strategic capital plan? So when you're looking at the capital budget here, we're kind of talking about the following year. What does that look like? The strategic capital plan is looking out and planning even further than 1 year, but it's looking, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. Like, what does that look like as far as our equipment, our buildings, things that will need to be replaced or repaired? What are some of those bigger purchases that you want to have an idea of? And I don't have any questions in here specific to the capital budget process and the presentation, but there are some questions in the workbook that you can go over as well. The next slide, we're talking about operating expense versus capital expense. Capital expenses are specifically defined by each tribe. You can usually find what this is in your audited financial statements. At the back of those financial statements are notes, and in those notes, it will include what your nation considers capital. Typically, a capital expense has a useful life of more than 1 year, and it's above a certain dollar amount, like $5,000 or $10,000. That's a lot of times what I've seen. Whereas operating expenses are your short-term purchases for day-to-day operations. That's the difference between the operating and capital. So moving on to the next slide. What does your budget process look like? Do you have that conversation with your CFO? Here are some questions that you could ask. What information system is used to create the budget? Were managers and directors part of the conversation? Was the budget created based on historical data for each department? And is there an ideal time frame for review and approval to ensure budgets are ready for the following year? And one of the biggest questions here is, does the process align with your values and culture? Something always important to consider in all of your system processes. One more budget that we'll talk about is grants. On the next slide, we have grants budgeting. This may be included if the grant's already been approved and accepted by the tribe, and the grant funding continues into the next budget year for the tribe. So just kind of depends on how that budget is pulled together. Sometimes grants are included, sometimes they're not. Excuse me. If we go to the next slide, we talk about some of the challenges with that. Again, as discussed with financial reporting, it's the same thing with budgeting. What information system is used for budgeting? Can reports be easily pulled to be able to include that with the budget? And because the different reporting cycles don't match up to the tribe's fiscal year, that can just be difficult to try to manage. And the challenge, especially right now, is until you actually receive the funding, you are not guaranteed to get it, or receipt of the grant funding could be delayed. So as evidence this year, administrations can have a significant impact on what that looks like. With the flurry of executive orders received earlier this year that created a lot of chaos for tribal finance departments, and nations having to go back and look at what that impact actually looks like, analyzing what that impact would be if no grant funding is released from the administration. So those are some of the challenges of trying to include grants budgets into your budget process overall. Some budget process tips here. Help build accountability by asking for a timeline. Schedule time during a meeting or schedule a special meeting to review and approve the budget. And if you don't already receive budget versus actual reports, I would ask for them. All right, so we have a budget and budget process reflection.